A warm welcome to Governance Now. This is Gitanjali Minhas and you're watching Checks and Balances. Two bills that aim to bring in one nation, one election, the Constitution 129th Amendment Bill with insertion of new Article 82A and amendment to Article 83 and 172, as well as the Union Territories Law Amendment Bill were introduced in the winter session of Lok Sabha 2024 and sent to JPC for review. The high-level committee chaired by former President Ram Nath Kovind has recommended at the time of next Lok Sabha elections, all state assemblies and local bodies should be dissolved irrespective of the remaining term as a one-time measure to synchronize all elections. For hung legislature or local body, the committee recommends fresh elections for the remaining term. The reduced term will be equivalent to the cycle of 5-year period for simultaneous elections. The proposal of one nation, one election has been widely discussed across the country, inviting strong opposition, not only from the opposition parties, but also civil society and political parties at large. The government says that simultaneous polls will save unnecessary expenditure which is incurred due to frequent and recurring elections, which it can spend on infrastructure, etc., and also policy paralysis due to model code of conduct which is imposed in that particular area. However, critics of the proposal say that neither the Government of India nor the Kovind-led committee have given any specific details of the amount that will be saved due to simultaneous elections. How much do segregated elections cost? There's no clarity. The committee cites the Election Commission of India to peg the cost of simultaneous elections as rupees 4,500 crore. One nation, one election is not new to India. After India became republic in 1950, simultaneous elections were held till the 4th General Assembly in 1967. Due to political instability in many states, the assemblies had to be dissolved, and that is where it stopped, as Lok Sabha and the state assemblies were constituted at different times. Speaking on the issue is our expert guest P.D.T. Achary, former Secretary General Lok Sabha, who's also written extensively on the Constitution.
Well, it is true. Elections in India involve very huge expenditure. But then there are two aspects which we should keep in mind. One is the Election Commission conducts the elections. So Election Commission incurs certain expenditure. Election Commission given money by the government after it is sanctioned by Parliament. So there is a budget for the Election Commission which is passed by Parliament. This time in 2023-24 budget, the total amount allocated for Election Commission was around 466 crores. That was meant for this election. But then that is not the only expenditure which the government incurs. For example, the state governments will have to incur some expenditure because they have to arrange the logistics, hiring buildings and so many other expenditure is there. And then moving policemen from one place to another, that also involves expenditure. Altogether, we can say a few thousand crores will have to be spent by government on a particular election. But then there is an estimate of the election expenditure incurred by the political parties. In the last 2024 elections, it has come in the paper that it is of course an approximate kind of calculation. Political parties have spent about 1.35 lakh crores. Is a huge amount. And political parties are normally financed by corporate houses. And therefore, government doesn't spend any money on political parties. Government spends money only for conducting the elections. Now the question is whether we want to save this 1.35 lakh crores rupees spent by the political parties. The presumption is that we can spend that money on building infrastructure and all that. But there is no evidence to suggest that these political parties who are spending this huge lot of money will be spending this amount on building infrastructure in this country. After all, we had simultaneous elections from 1951-52 to 1967, and political parties must have spent a huge amount of money in all those elections. There is no evidence that any of these political parties ever spent any money on building schools and building roads and building other infrastructure. Second thing, government says that model code of conduct prevents the government from taking important policy decisions. There also, I would say that there is no evidence to suggest that the government has been hamstrung by the model code of conduct being in force in making policy decisions. Model code of conduct means the government cannot announce new financial incentives or new financial projects for a particular area. They have to hold back. After the elections, they can do that. Now, so many decisions. Why do you wait for this period to take decisions? After all, you have enough of time to take all decisions. The whole time is there to take all decisions and then make out a case that, look here, this model code of conduct is stopping us from taking important policy decisions.
Concurring with P.D.T. Achary, former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Quraishi here says that blaming the Model Code of Conduct is unfounded and exaggerated. Only one thing is affected, and that is new schemes. Everything continues as usual. Of course, political parties who are contesting the elections cannot use government vehicles and staff, but that which has been followed for the last 40 years.
For election commission, it will be very convenient that we conduct elections once in 5 years and go home and play golf for 5 years. But of course, elections are happening all the time, somewhere or the other. The election commission, because wherever the election, one has to be there. The parties who want to win that election, wherever it is, they have to be involved. But that is the job of the political in winning election. So to say that work comes to standstill is wrong. I have often asked this question: why is it that the bright ideas for new schemes come to the mind of politicians only 2 weeks before the election? Even after being in power for 4 years and 11 months, they had all the opportunity to introduce these brilliant schemes. Those brilliant schemes come to their mind only 2 weeks before election. And since the model code comes in any case, the election dates are not unpredictable. When the term of the House is ending, you can roughly calculate to the accuracy of a week. So once they know the election is coming closer, they should hurry up their voter seducing announcement. What shows the insincerity? For the last 10 years, prolonged elections have been happening. Even in the cases where there used to be simultaneous election, like Gujarat and Himachal, 10 years ago, they were separated by 22 days, which means 22 days longer while application of the Model Code of Conduct. What does it mean? Total lack of sincerity. I once heard a BJD MP make a very great statement. He says, have you asked the people what is it that they want? They love frequent elections, because that is the only power they have. Leaders go to them again and again with folded hands, so it increases their accountability.
Invoking the time when constitutional debates were happening and various constitutions around the world were being consulted, political commentator and President Aravali Forum, Rajat Sethi says that framers of a constitution chose the middle ground, that India is a union of states and as a whole, Bharat is one and cannot be broken down into parts.
Go to the intentions of what our constitution makers had in mind in the Constituent Assembly. Pick up those volumes of discussions. When they said they started off with elections of the state and the center together, did they think that this is going to create Nehru into a dictator? And Nehru himself was part of those Constituent Assembly discussions. They had actually gone through and understood every single aspect of what it entails. When you are going in and starting off at T equal to 0, which was 1952, for simultaneous state elections and simultaneous national elections. And that carried on for 2 decades. Did it result into dictators? No. The only dictator that free India saw was Indira Gandhi when there were no simultaneous elections. This pattern got broken off. Something that our Constituent Assembly makers designed was because this irrational president's rule were being invoked. The first irrational thing was done by Prime Minister Nehru when he brought in a president's rule in Kerala and he uprooted a democratically elected state government there. Constitutional makers were cognizant that you need to give 5 years of term to every elected government. That was the thesis with which the constitutional makers started off with. They did not anticipate that if things don't go well, perhaps the public should start holding the government accountable every 3 months, every 4 months by having these intermediary elections around the country. You should give clean 5 years without the pulls and pressures of day-to-day politicking in order to implement the agenda for which they have been chosen. And I believe over a period of time, this perversion in the core thinking of our constitution makers has happened, such that after every 3 months, we have an election wherein all political parties of all hues, they tend to get involved in, and they tend to spend at least 3 to 4 months in planning, in execution of these election strategies. This also derails the parties which are in power, because their attention also goes into these regular elections that happen. It derails the agenda on which one government at the center or at the state has been elected for. And this is where I think a course correction has to be done.
According to the Coven Committee, 18 legislative changes, including 15 constitutional amendments to the key articles are required, including Article 83, 85 2B, 174 2B, 356 and 75 3, along with changes to the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 are significantly challenging. For simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, no ratification is required by the states for constitutional amendments. Constitutional amendments to the local bodies and panchayats will need to be ratified by at least half of the states.
But here, there are two issues. One is, this is an attempt to alter the federal structure of an autonomous legislative body like the legislature. Has fixed tenure of 5 years, and that is independent of the tenure of parliament. And it is an aspect of autonomy of the state. And therefore, if you try to tamper with that, you are tampering with the federal structure, which parliament cannot do. Because under Keshavananda Bharati decision, parliament cannot alter the basic structure of the constitution. Parliament can amend any part of the constitution, but they cannot alter the basic structure of the constitution. So if you are trying to alter the basic federalism, the federal structure, that means you are altering the basic structure of the constitution, which you can't do. That is how the whole thing has been designed. Second thing is, that is a practical view. In the present situation, most of the opposition parties functioning in parliament have opposed it. That means they are going to vote against it. If they are going to vote against it, then they will not be able to pass this law in parliament.
Coven Committee report says that simultaneous elections will increase the country's GDP by 1.5%, that is, rupees 4,500 crore.
I'm not a financial expert, so I can't answer that question about GDP. Of course, one can say that this has tremendous impact on international situation and all that. That kind of arguments, can be made. Simultaneous elections in India will have tremendous impact on international peace and prosperity. So what is wrong in saying that? Anybody can say anything, that.
Amendments to the Constitution require special majority and 2/3 members present in the voting. In the 543-member Lok Sabha, 362 votes are required. At the moment, the government has 269 mandates. Most regional parties running governments in their states are opposed to these amendments.
At times, we citizens and voters of this country expect our political leaders to do. It is for them to rise up the political division and start thinking about where the country has to go forward. How can we all work together towards certain issues which are purely bipartisan in nature? Can we all not come together and at least ask our politicians of the day that here is something which is largely not in the interest of single party alone, but as a country we need to come together on. And I believe this is where parties will have to clear their stand, that politicking all the time cannot be the mainstay. But look at the draft bill that has been positioned. It's a beautiful, short and sweet bill which brings in small tinkering with the constitutional provisions to actually make this happen. Given that how Prime Minister Modi has put a lot of political capital into it and tried to reach out to people who are antagonistic to this idea, gives me hope that certain bipartisan thought process can be expected from our politicians.
This proposal actually, to my mind, it will create more problems than it can solve. And let me remind you, the Prime Minister, when he raised this issue 11 years ago, he made it very clear that he wants a national debate on it and a national consensus. The debate happened, consensus could not be achieved. Logical conclusion would have been that after 10 years of debate, if you cannot achieve the consensus, the idea is not worth pursuing, it should have been shelved. But the government decided that enough of the debate, we are going to do it anyway. Now that is very arbitrary. Dragging a former Rashtrapati into a political and Sarkari committee is totally wrong. It is an abuse of authority. Every recommendation of this committee, irrespective of who was the chairman, will be subject to scrutiny with reasonability, legality and everything, which is exactly what is happening. This committee has done a good job. They have about 18,000-page report, and they have recorded all the views of verbatim very truthfully and honestly. Now, the criticism of this, which I got from his report only, some people said, hey, look, you send these questionnaires only in English and Hindi. So obviously from the Hindi, if you had sent it in Marathi, Tamil, the result would have been different. This comes out from the report only. But what about the rest of India? It's bigger than the Hindi belt.
Periodic elections are required, according to me, because we don't have right to recall. If the general public feels that an MLA or MP is not functioning, is not responsive and all that, he should be changed. We can't change him. If elections are held only once in 5 years, these representatives will think that next elections are only 5 years away. So why should we trouble ourselves now? We will be pursuing our own business and all that. We will not go to the constituency. They will not go to the constituency, I can assure you. If elections are held only once in 5 years.
That's true.
Today it is assembly or tomorrow it is parliament. These representatives of the people will have to go to the people again and again.
Right.
Going to the people again and again is very necessary to ensure accountability. Accountability is the essence of parliamentary system of government. From the government point of view, it helps them because the government will know which way the wind is blowing, whether people are with them or people have moved away from them and all that kind of thing. On a particular policy matter,
Do you think that politics and voting is the only avenue that in a democracy to actually voice your grievance with the incumbent MP or MLA? Aren't there other ways? Farmers are protesting in Punjab and Haryana without an election being there because voting is just one way of registering your dissent. Any cognizant MP or an MLA will have to keep his eyes close to the ground. Policy making are not always about instant gratification. You need to face pain in the short term for gain in the long term. You cannot work for certain painful reforms that you have to go through because every time the politician will have one election or the other going in the back of his mind.
Opponents of one nation, one election argue that smaller regional parties will get overshadowed by national parties and local and regional issues will get subsumed due to simultaneous elections.
What is the data evidence that the opposition parties opposing one nation, one poll is actually banking upon? I can go on and on with examples where voters have shown astute understanding of politics. They have chosen a different party at the state while simultaneously voting for another party for the national election. Yes. So much so that in the Maharashtra election as well, there was a Nanded Lok Sabha. We saw the entire state had a tsunami for BJP. Every single seat, all seats went to the BJP alliance. But look at that Nanded Lok Sabha seat. All the 6 assemblies within the Nanded election went to the BJP alliance, but the Nanded Lok Sabha went to Congress. Clearly, voters were absolutely smart about their choice. They were like, we need to empower the opposition in the center, but we need to empower the BJP government in the state. Why are people trying to attribute that we are entering into a democracy 2.0 project? It's not that. We are essentially saying that come the next Lok Sabha, we will have simultaneous election that we just press the reset button where the constitution, when it was adopted, that was T equal to 0. There is no new polity coming into existence. There is a reason why election system of India is celebrated around the world. The amount of deliberations our Election Commission of India has with every single election body in entire global south in mature democracies, it is seen as a case study of success. And we have the wherewithal to conduct this scale of an election. And I believe a lot of former chief election commissioners have said it on record that we have the capacity to do it.
The 100-day gap between local body and panchayat elections and state assembly and Lok Sabha elections, opponents say, defeat the very purpose of cost savings as these are separate elections and require repeating massive arrangements in the vast topography of the country.
15 million people is our staff for the general election. Before they get over their fatigue, they will be called again to do that. Then after 100 days, is a separate election. It is not a simultaneous election. So you are suggesting simultaneous election, but these are the suggestions which go contrary. Simultaneous election, all three are together. You just press 3 buttons and go home. The Election Commission was asked the logistical requirements, and it has mentioned very clearly that you will require 3 times EVM and VVPAT because currently the same EVM is recycled from Lok Sabha is over and there is no litigation, so machines are free. You can erase the data and do another election in another state for Vidhan Sabha. Recycling is not a possibility now because if all 3 elections are together, you need 3 times the machine. Now, I remember hearing Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar that recent election, they used 55 lakh EVMs. So 3 times 55 is 1 crore more machines. Now 1 crore more machines, mind you, the proposal is for saving costs. 1 crore machines at the cost of 35,000 per set. Calculate, I can't even calculate it.
Right.
Lakhs of crores. Are you saving money? Manufacturing these so many machines will require, as you said, there have to be enough semiconductors, there have to be enough equipment available, components available. Are they? How long will it take for them to make these machines? These are issues which should have been discussed. The machines which were used in the general election were last produced in 2013. We have to be very watchful what can happen in the future generation machines, and with artificial intelligence, so much of mischief is possible. All these implications have to be examined by experts.
I personally don't feel cost is a factor for running a democracy. We as a nation where our GDP runs into $4 trillion, we cannot afford $1 billion of elections. I don't see that. And today, if there is a minority government which gets elected and if the government falls, are you not going to have another round of election if no viable option is there?
That is the idea behind one election. It is to save the cost.
This might be one of the... Relatively, yes. Then the same thing happens in the current scenario versus that scenario. It will be certainly less than or equal to what the current state of affairs is.
An IDFC Institute study in 2015 found that 77% voters tended to choose the same party in case assembly elections and Lok Sabha elections were held together, as against 61% if elections were held 6 months apart. Quraishi says that India, being one of the most diverse countries in the world, with so many religions, 22 different languages, racial, ethnic and geographical diversity, where each state has its own political dynamics, that beauty should not be disturbed.
If Lok Sabha falls for any reason, why should 28 states, which have come up with absolute majorities in their state, and they're doing a good job, they're very stable, why should they be destabilized? You're providing for midterm polls, you're accepting the reality of a midterm poll, except that it will be for the remainder of the term. There also there is an anomaly. The MP, the MLA, all these candidates, they spend lakhs and crores, which is maybe illegal, spend crores to win election for 5 years.
Yeah.
Now they will be fighting the same election for a remainder term of 2 years. For very little gain, very large damage is being attempted. Remember, India is a union of states. You are planning to dictate from Delhi to the whole country.
The opposition has also come down heavily on union ministers as well as Prime Minister Narendra Modi campaigning in every segment of the state assembly before elections, something it says has never been seen before.
Every politician will think if there is an election, it is his principal duty to actually continue to be in power. And they will do everything under the sun, under the constitution to make that feasible. Because Manmohan Singh never contested and elected on his own ever. He was a politician who was bereft of the political pressures because he came in from Rajat Sabha for 11 terms. Because he was never a popularly elected leader that way. Look at all other politicians. They had to respond to every single state election, go out and canvass for the party. That is the principal job. And this is why you need to have a space for the incumbent politicians in power, give them that space to actually go out and work on these tough policies and not be judged at the drop of the hat. So if we have to grow, we need to remove our politicians, isolate them from this every quarterly elections that happens in one corner or the other corner.
Now, the issue of black money in elections has been raised time and again. Will simultaneous elections stop black money and pressure on business houses for political donations?
State funding of election is the only way. You can curb the black money. And there should be a total ban on political parties spending money on elections. If that is done, then the whole thing will be done by the government. Government can give money to political parties for running their campaign and all that, maybe on the basis of some strength or something, or maybe some formula they can devise for doing that. That's an idea whose time has come. Although there were some discussion idea some time back, but it has not taken off the ground. Perhaps the government is not yet ready to experiment.
There is a ceiling on expenditure by candidates. For instance, for Lok Sabha, if you are a candidate, you can't spend more than 95 lakhs. But your party can spend 5 and 10 crores or 20 crores. So this makes mockery of the concept of ceiling on expenditure by a political party. We borrowed our system from UK. Westminster model. In UK, there is a limit on political party expenditure, and just see the results. Let people contribute to the National Election Fund. It will be distributed to political parties based on their political performance. electoral performance. They take if you give 100 rupees for every vote that you get, how many votes you got. That is a figure which cannot even be fudged. If you got 100 votes, you got 100 votes. In principle, based on electoral performance, if the money is given by a check gracefully,
Right.
so all the dependents and the corporates will disappear.
Absolutely.
Because there is no free lunch. If they give you money, they get free, they get licenses, they get contracts, they get bank loans which they run away to England. Don't we have all these cases in front of us?
Electoral finances have to be cleaned up with or without one nation, one polls. You cannot have such a cash incentivized election processes going in the future as well. So you need to remove cash. And one of the important ways of doing that was demonetization in the process. Create cash as an evil cow. And that goes into every aspect of our living. Why should we call out the politicians alone? The businesses, they also need to take half the blame. A lot of the business houses still accept cash, are still transacting in cash. They should stop. The problem is that we consider politicians as a separate being from us. Today, I want to say that, okay, I will continue to deal in cash, but my politicians shouldn't deal in cash. It's not going to happen. They are also cut out of the same milieu as we are. People and especially our leaders will have to rise up to the occasion. We have a very short, sweet demographic window of maybe 15 years. Either we grow before we get old, or we remain a permanent poor nation. We need to grow at a breakneck pace of 8% minimum. Therefore, it is important to balance out the democratic institutions like elections and also ensure you give a clean runway of 5 years to our policy makers to continue taking tough reform measures and not be lured into this short-term gratification over and over and over again.
The bill, if it becomes law, can be subject to judicial scrutiny. For now, it's the numbers that matter. Thank you for watching Checks and Balances.